Hey, thanks for joining me today. I've had a lot of people asking me about royal icing cookies and how to make them look nice and professional. We're going to go through that today, but I'm going to show you a really easy way to make a cookie bouquet while you're doing that. Let's start with what recipe you're going to use. If you go to sweetwise.com and there's a recipes tab right at the top, just scroll down to the rollout cookie recipe. It's one I use all the time. It's very consistent. It's durable. You can freeze them. The dough or the finished cookie you can freeze, so that's a really great thing. So one thing is that you're going to want to roll it thick, and we'll talk about these in just a second. But the sticks I'm using today, we have 4-inch, 6-inch, 8-inch, 10-inch sticks, and today I'm going to use these 10-inch sticks, and they're really nice and thick and durable, which is perfect for a cookie bouquet. And another thing I'm going to use today for the royal icing is the meringue powder. This is a 1-pound container, and I really love the container that we put it in. These are really great to use. You can throw them in the dishwasher after your container's empty, but you put colored icings in them or pearls or whatever. These are really great containers. And I find I use so much royal icing, so much meringue powder, that this 1-pound pack turns out to be a really great value. So that's something you want to look at. So one thing, once you've got your cookie dough made, one thing I do differently with the bouquet cookies than if I'm just doing a regular cookie is I like to chill the dough first. It tends to be a little bit easier to handle, and it's a little bit easier to leave it thick. And for cookie bouquets, it's important that you do leave it thick. The ideal thickness is about 8 to 10 millimeters is what you want on cookie bouquets. And there's a couple of different schools of thought on how to get the stick into the cookie. So let me show you. One method is to roll out the cookie and insert the stick before it's baked. And then you can actually patch the back. So you can see like a real thin piece that I put here that kind of traps that stick in. One thing I don't like about this is you can have a little divot and it almost like pushes these sides up and then has an indentation here. You can fix that to some degree, like here on this, I'm going to turn this into a tuxedo here in a minute, but if you fill that little ditch with a little bit of royal icing and let it set up, it kind of brings it back to level, so that's okay. Another method is just making sure that it's extra thick so that the stick goes all the way in there. One thing that can happen with that is it pushes the dough up, and that can be a little bit imperfect. What I like to do is actually let the cookie bake, and then as soon as it comes out of the oven while it's still warm, I will use a fondant smoother. We'll pretend that this is still dough even though that's baked. But I'll use a fondant smoother so that my fingerprints don't leave an impression. And then again, while it's still warm, just insert that stick. And you can actually tell how far it's gone in if you have an extra stick beside you and kind of put it up against this one so I know it's this far in. And you definitely want to get it at least halfway up there. So once you've got your royal icing made, just follow the directions on the back. The consistency should be something like peanut butter, and I need you to be a little bit flexible with how much water you add. For instance, today it's pouring down rain outside, so it's real humid. So I'm going to hold back a little on the water, maybe just by a couple tablespoons, and then just dribble it in at the end just to get the right consistency. If you have it too soft, then when you go to pipe something like maybe a shell border, it's not going to hold its shape very well, and then it's just going to look really flat, and that's not what you want with royal icing. Take the time. If it does fall flat, if it's too soft, go ahead and take it back out of your bag, stiffen it up a little bit with a little bit of extra powdered sugar, and that way you're going to have the right look. So just make sure you take that extra step for a nice looking cookie. Let me show you really quickly what we're going with. We're going to use both royal icing and color flow today, and they're basically the same thing except color flow is a little bit thinner. So basically royal icing, you're going to want it to be thick enough to pipe. Okay, it's not going to be runny. And the difference with the color flow is that when it comes out, it holds, see how it holds its shape for just a few seconds, and then see how it falls out? That's what you're looking for. It's kind of about the consistency of honey. So again, basically the same thing, but you just thin down the color flow icing with just a few drops of water. Now let's get to the fun part. I've got a wedding cookie bouquet theme that I'm doing today. So first let me show you a little bit of the basics of doing the cookies. So I have some royal icing and some color flow set up here, and I just have these bottles turned upside down just because it's primed already. This sponge here is wet, so that keeps the tips of the tubes from drying out, and then the back sides are sealed with a little band as well. So I'm ready to go. So what I'm going to do, if you'll watch me pipe a straight line off of it, basically what I'm going to do is touch down. And I'm not trying to draw a straight line because it's just almost impossible. It's better if you'll touch down and squeeze and let it drop, and you're gonna get a much straighter line like that. So what we're gonna do is make a border, and I'm just gonna do like a solid color cookie here. I'm just gonna touch down, and I'm gonna go about a 1/4 inch in from the edge. if you don't do this border, you run the risk of the color flow icing, the thinner one, just rolling right off the sides and looking really, really sloppy. So this dries really, really fast. While I'm not using this, I'm going to go ahead and put it back in my icing bag stand. This dries really, really fast. It's probably set up enough already that I can go ahead and fill in with the color flow. So one thing is, don't go all over the place like this. Because it dries so fast, you run the risk of creating a seam. What I like to do is really keep that tip down in there. You see I'm not kind of stretched away from it like this, is I keep my tip down in there, and that way I can kind of use the tip to spread the icing out a little bit. One thing I really love about this color flow icing is that if you dry it under a lamp, like a desk lamp or something, it dries really, really shiny. Another thing I like about this, rather than like spreading an icing onto a cookie, is that it dries kind of puffy, kind of like a little bit of a 3D effect, and that's really nice. If you have bigger areas like this, you can always cut your tip back a little bit to make it come out a little bit faster. So one thing I want to warn you about also is, let's say you've gotten this far and the doorbell rings. If you walk off and leave that, it's going to dry. And when you come back and fill in this other half, it's going to make a seam. So once you get started on a cookie, go ahead and finish it all the way. Alright, so we've got that all filled in, and just to make sure that every little piece is filled in, we're going to shake it a little bit, give it a light tap, and any other pieces you can use the tip of your nozzle to fill in. And then before you leave it alone, like if that peak wants to stay, just kind of shake it a little bit so it's nice and smooth. And then again, if you'll set that under like a desk lamp, it dries nice and shiny. So now we've had our practice, we're ready to get busy on these wedding cookies. So let me show you a little bit of an advanced technique. It's not so advanced, it's really just kind of a step up. What I've got here with the wedding theme is I've got a bride cookie and a groom cookie. So I'm going to show you a tuxedo on this. And the technique that I'm showing you is color blocking. So I want a distinct difference between the white part for the shirt and then the black for the tuxedo part. So you can see, if you look real close, that I did do a line, and I already let this dry overnight. And I'm going to go ahead and go back and just do another border. Again, I'm not drawing a line. I'm just kind of letting it fall. I'm connecting here and coming all the way down to the tip. So there's already a border here, so that's going to be fine, but I definitely wanted to create a border on the outside so that when I put my color flow in there, it doesn't roll off the side. So easy to do. We're just going to do the same thing we did before and fill in. You want to make sure it doesn't get so full that it rolls off the sides. But I'm just going to go right up to the edge there. And if you give some time really for that white to dry thoroughly, you're going to have less chance of the black bleeding into the white and kind of marring the color of it. Having them nice and dry is a really, really good thing to do when you're color blocking. This would look really cute on a square, like if you did a Rubik's Cube, for instance. All those little colored squares with a black border to distinct the sections. So we'll just go through and finish this up. Again, just keeping my tip down in there. All right, and then once I'm done, just give it a little shake to get it nice and even. Okay, so if you look over on this side, I went over a little bit. See how this makes it a little bit sloppy there? I filled up a little too much there. I'd rather it not be there. I'm going to see if I can just kind of gently wipe that edge, and maybe it'll dry like that. That'd be much better. So it's really important, now that I have this base down, I want to let that dry. If I tried to, like over here on the bride's cookie, if I tried to pipe this ruching over this while it was still wet, it would just fall into it. So make sure you let it dry. So remember, once you have all your cookies decorated, that you want to let them dry at least overnight. This royal icing can't be rushed. If you try to touch it, it's going to get marred. If you try to stack them on top of each other, they're going to get marred. So just make sure that you let them dry thoroughly at room temperature, out a nice dry place. without touching them until they're ready to go. So now we're ready to get it into the base. You can choose anything you want. It can be a flower pot, it can be a watering can, it can be a vase, any sort of thing. One thing you want to remember though is these cookies, because they're so thick, are a little bit heavy. So I like to use like kind of a heavy bottom base so that it doesn't get top heavy and tilt over. So this is just something I picked up at a craft store. It's nice and heavy. And then I just got like a floral foam and I just kind of carved it down so it would fit in there really, really snug. Okay, and then I made sure it's level with the top. So one thing is if I try to take one of these cookies and smash it in here, is I take a chance of kind of loosening the cookie from the stick. So I want to make sure I give it the best chance possible. So what I'm going to do is take a stick that's not on a cookie and just go ahead and insert that down and then make several holes. Now if we assume the back is towards me, these in the back want to be a little bit taller than the ones in the front so that you can see all of the cookies independently. So I'm just going to put like 3 holes here in the back and maybe 2 here in the middle, and maybe 3 more in the front. And these in the front will go deeper. They'll go all the way down. So I'm just making some holes to get started. Okay, now we're ready to go. Let's go with our gift cookie. And it just goes right in the back. We'll go with our cake cookie because it's nice and tall. Let's go with I do. All right, now we're going to go to our middle row, and we want these to go down a little bit more. You could also, if you want to really shingle these down or make it like a stadium where it's tall, middle, low, you can also cut the sticks off a little bit to make sure that it fits for you. But I'm just going to go ahead and push these down a little bit more. There we go. And you can put their wedding date on a square cookie. Put this one in next. Pushing that down in there. All right. So the ones in the front I did already cut down a little bit. So I'm just going to get that down in there. And then we'll put the bride in here. And then I'm going to finish off the groom and get him in there right beside the bride. And then we're going to be ready to wrap it and go. Okay, so my tuxedo base has dried for about an hour. It's firm enough that it's going to hold the icing that I pipe on top of it. So once I do this second layer of piping, before you put it in a bouquet and actually serve it, you would want to let it dry overnight. But 1 hour is good enough for the base to dry to pipe on. So this is going to be pretty easy. I put a smaller tip in here. This is a number 1. And all you're going to do, again with your black icing, is a little bit of a zigzag. And that's going to be like your lapel. And then you're going to bring it straight down. And then all the way down. And again, I'm doing this upside down, so hoping that looks good. Other side, same thing, lapel. And then you're going to bring it down to meet that as well. Now, you'll have a couple of little jacket buttons here. And then you're going to do a couple of buttons for the shirt. We'll just do 3 there. And then the bow tie. So just a triangle here. And fill that in, and then a triangle here, and fill that in, and a little dot in the middle. I'll put one more little button there to kind of fill out that shirt. That would look good. Now, finish it off. I have a pre-made royal icing flower here. You can pipe these right on here if you want, but I kind of like to do them ahead of time so they hold up a little bit of shape. So I'm just going to put it over here, a little dot of icing to help it stick. And again, I'm going to let this dry like overnight before I put it in the bouquet, but I can show you where it's going to go. Again, this is going to go down on the front of it, so I need to cut off about 2 inches of that stick. I just use my pruning shears to do that. All right. And then it's just going to go right down on the front of that bouquet. And then you're going to be ready to wrap it and let it go. Now, one thing you want to do is cover up this floral block. So you can have a little bit of shredded paper, some candies, anything like that. You can you could put a few dots of royal icing down there to actually help it stick if you want, but really covering up that front part where they're first going to see it is super important. All the way around. And especially if you wrap this with cellophane, this stays in place really, really well. Then you're just going to take off the excess so it's nice and clean. All right, so you're just gonna clean this up a little bit, make sure there's nothing falling too far out here. You can tuck it around the edges, trying to make sure everything's covered up real nicely. And then once you put it in that cellophane, it's gonna be nice and compact and really looking good. Try out that cookie recipe that we have on the Sweetwise website, the rolled cookie recipe. It's nice and durable, it's tasty, people always love it. Remember to roll your cookies like 8 to 10 millimeters, and it's gonna be an ideal thickness for your cookie bouquet. If you haven't tried one, give it a try. They're a lot of fun and people really love them. Thanks for watching.